Hi, and welcome to another episode of Startup Chuck. Today we are going to talk about choosing a manufacturer. This is going to be mostly overseas, but could work for domestic manufacturing as well. What I would suggest is try not to be your own manufacturer. It is quite exhausting. You can for sure do it. I've met a few people who have taken their product and started manufacturing it themselves and then eventually turned that into very successful companies. So it can be done. You can scale it. Depends on the type of product you're trying to do, and if the price points are right, then maybe it does make sense to manufacture it yourself. But for this is going to mainly talk about external manufacturing. So the first thing is, if you want somebody to make your product, you are going to want to make sure that it is in a state where it can be made. That's a big problem if you have prototypes and not a final product designed. So first step is getting your prototype to what we want to call golden sample pre-production level. For Asian manufacturing, for example, you typically will send them in the mail a perfect copy of what you want them to make, and then they will just make it. You can then provide drawings and things like that after the fact that have specifics on them, tolerances and whatnot, but most of the time they will not go off of your drawings right up front. They'll go off of what they see and then look at the drawings if they have to figure everything out. With that in mind, it's important to sign your golden sample, sign all the parts on it with a Sharpie so that if there's ever concern that the sample they have on the shelf there isn't the original, you know, because you can recognize your signature. Another thing is that you don't want to mail it via the U.S. Postal Service. It's best to just ship it via UPS. If you're worried about shipping costs, I found that Pirate Ship is actually the cheapest shipper I've ever found, and they can save you a lot in shipping things internationally. Plus, it'll get there in 3 or 4 days as opposed to a few weeks if you do the Postal Service sometimes. So also when you are getting your golden sample, it's really good if you take the time to manufacture a small run of prototype parts that are in the final manufacturable configuration, so that then you sit down and you assemble it yourself, because you will catch more manufacturing problems doing it that way than you would otherwise do so. Case in point, on the chuck rack, ski rack that I developed, I had wanted to do a welded bucket design instead of a riveted bucket design. And so in order to see how difficult that would be, I sat down and actually welded a couple myself, and it was eye-opening how much more time-consuming it was, how difficult it was to be consistent, and then lastly, how much warpage I got in the material after I welded. Plus then you have weld cracks due to if you have poor weld and they're not clean, things like that, which could lead to catastrophic failure. So now the bucket is actually riveted together and then powder coated. Speaking of chuck rack, this episode is sponsored by Chuck Rack, and they make a hitch mount ski rack, and also a bike rack that goes on your hitch, and it swaps between the two on one main post. And so that is my company that is sponsoring this video. Check them out if you're interested in that sort of thing. And if not, back to us talking about, now that you've got your golden sample and you've tried manufacturing it and haven't gone back to the drawing board because it manufactured fine, it went together okay, which you'd be surprised. Chances are you go to put it together and you realize, oh, the snap fit isn't the way I thought it was. It's way harder to get these two parts together, or this finish isn't the way I want it to be. Then you go back and you modify all your drawings and change everything. And it's great because instead of making 5,000 of something that isn't the way you think it should be, now it's going to be just the way you want it to be. Also, it's good to put these pre-manufacturing samples through lots of testing, because you might find that you have to beef up things or make things stronger, or maybe like certain things get worn more than you thought. So anyways, you've got your golden pre-manufacturing samples. Now the thing is finding a company that makes the product. So you can go to trade shows and talk to companies that might manufacture certain things. It's good if you go to trade shows that are in your specific industry. So if you wanted to go to, I guess there's probably like a kitchen gadget company expo out there, then you could do things like walk around with your golden sample and find a manufacturer of kitchen gadgets and say, I'm wondering if you could make this for me, this plastic injection molded part. And they might be willing to do that. They might be willing to license it from you. You could also go to a lot of mechanical manufacturing conventions and just look for people that do injection molding. And you can come up to them and say, hi, I've got this tuna strainer with a magnet on it. I was wondering if you could injection mold it and overmold this magnet in there or press it in there for me. And then they could probably help you, get pricing and whatnot. But if you're going to do it overseas, then the easiest way to find a company is you look on Alibaba or a similar website and find a product that's similar. So Spork is a great example. So let me go here. Now I'm on Alibaba and I typed in Spork and I got a Spork company here. Looks good. So then you go to that company and you come over here and you say, oh, okay, this is the Shenzhen Horsun Plastics and Molding. That sounds promising. And then you come over here and you look at what they do and the services they offer and the equipment they have and the products. And so you get all sorts of ideas, and then you can hit send inquiry, and you can say, hey, I am trying to make this product, and you send them a drawing, and then they'll get back to you and give you a quote. Typically, they'll have some sort of minimum order quantity and a tooling cost. And they can do it two ways. They can either give you both a tooling cost and a lower minimum order quantity, or they can give you tooling included and a higher minimum order quantity. So for example, company ABC here, they might have tooling of $4,000. And you might think that's low, but that's actually pretty reasonable. I mean, I think that the tool for this was about $3,500 or less. I had 5,000 of these made for about 75 cents each. And then the packaging, and then they zip tied the packaging to the part, put them in bags, put them in boxes, and so complete turnkey. And then I think I had this graphic design done via, it wasn't on Fiverr, but some consultant, and they did it for $125 for this design, which was great. And so I just sent the design file over to them, and I got these back by the caseload. Actually, I filled an entire UPS truck myself, which I'd never done before, and I have way too many of them. But either way, so minimum order quantity, let's say, is 5,000. This is where you'll go through and you'll find these companies, and you'll want to find 5, 10 companies, etc. And then you'll want to send requests for quotes out, and they're going to have all these questions, and you'll go back and forth, and you're going to want to create a spreadsheet like this where you put in information on each one of these companies, like the tooling costs and the unit price they're giving you and the minimum order quantity, and then you'll get an idea of the total cost it's going to be, and then the unit price including both the tooling and your minimum order quantity. And then if you were to eventually buy 10,000 units, now that the tooling cost is already baked in, what does that equal out to? But then there's other important information here, like communication. how good was their communication with you? Were they constantly giving you feedback back and forth? Did you have a difficult time talking with them and you feel like it's going to be an issue? Other items here like turnkey. Do they have turnkey manufacturing? Can they only make a single injection molded part and you have to do the packaging yourself? Or can they do turnkey where they put it all together and print it and ship it and you get it ready to ship directly to Amazon or something like that? That's an important factor. Another important factor is, do they have a similar product? Because if they don't have a similar product, then maybe they're not going to know how to manufacture what you're trying to do. You wouldn't go to a rubber strap company and have them try and make you sheet metal boxes, for example, right? So they could have adjacent products. So someone who does urethane injection molding, which is soft rubber straps, they might be able to do hard plastic injection molding. And in which case maybe they could send you some samples of things they had done. But you take all of these, and the reason I'm using zeros and ones in this area is because it makes it easier for me to then do conditional formatting. And so I'll come in here and I'll set up a color scale between, like red and green, and like green is good and red is bad. And yeah, here there's no gradients, but if I come over here and I'm looking at unit prices, and I add more formatting in here. Let's see here. I think I gotta go to format conditional. Yes, done. Gotta add it over here. Right? So this way I get at a moment's glance, I can kind of get an idea of which of these will be a good company to look at working with. So it's hard for injection molding to get samples because you have to pay for a mold. So here it's more important to get something up front good. But if you're doing something to where it's like machined parts, then what I like to do is ask for 5 prototypes of each. So you go to the machine part company and you say, okay, I'd like you to make 5 so I could assess your quality. And it's the same deal. You go on to Alibaba and you look up aluminum parts, right? And then you would find an aluminum parts manufacturer like this, custom aluminum, or maybe like this, and you find 5, 10, however many companies. You send them the parts that you want to get quotes on. You look at the quotes, and then from there you can decide which of the companies you want to get prototypes from. I like selecting 3 or 5 companies and then trying to get 5 prototypes from each and have them shipped to me. But communication here is really key. You really want to find a company that has good communication, and then you basically will either set it up through Alibaba or wire them money directly. You might do better to do it through Alibaba. A lot of times you'll actually save money in fees that way. It might be a 2% fee on a low amount of money, or 3% fee, compared to typically wiring money is a minimum of a $50 fee at the local bank. So that's something for you to look into there as well. And that's kind of it in terms of choosing a manufacturer. You'll then get the samples in, decide which of them is the best, and then you will place your order with that manufacturer. Typically, you don't want to give them all the money up front. You're going to want to give them half up front and then half when they're ready to ship. And then I'll have a whole nother episode on freight terms and conditions and receiving your product in. So one thing you do want to consider when you're looking at where they're going to manufacture your product, where these companies are located, and that might be another tab, is where in the country are they located? Like, are they on a port? That'll make it a little less expensive than if they're inland. If the products are small, maybe it's easier to air ship it, so it doesn't matter if they're inland. But it can add up. If they're far inland and then they got to truck it all the way to shore and then it's got to go from shore to you, you're adding cost, and it's just going to make your product more expensive. You can also take all these quotes, and this is where you get pricing. So now you have a rough idea of how much pricing is going to cost for your product, and that can be used for your Kickstarter campaign. It also can be used to determine whether or not you can even manufacture your product for a price point that people will be willing to pay. So again, 4x markup from your price here is kind of what you're going to be looking at for MSRP. If that MSRP value is outside of the range of what people are willing to pay, then you might not be able to sell a bunch of them. Something to consider. All right, well, that is about all I got for this episode. If you like what you've heard, please like and subscribe. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments and I'll try and answer them. Thank you.